Greetings and welcome again to one and all. Welcome to another episode of the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase. Another Reggae Planet Spotlight inside the Cool Game Podcast. Inside the Cool Game Podcast series. Yes, indeed. And today we're talking about the new team in the NHL. Big things going on in the NHL expansion. As you know, the NHL started out many years ago. And it was called the Original Six when it was only 6 teams. But right about now, it has expanded. The league has grown to a total of 32 teams. The newest team in the NHL is called the Seattle Kraken. They will be played in Seattle, Washington, USA. And they are the 32nd team to join the NHL. Yes, indeed, it's a brand new day and a brand new season coming up in NHL history. The Seattle Kraken will play their first game starting on October 12th, 2021. Yes, indeed, let's see what can happen. And let's see how fast they can become a contender. So far, they have gone through the expansion draft and they have gone through the entry draft. So, they're trying their best with their general manager, the great Ron Francis. They're working on making a competitive team. Yes, indeed. Takes a little while, it takes some time. They got to go through the expansion draft, which already happened. They had to go through the entry draft for the new players. That already happened also. And now, it's all about a few trades and a few signings of great outstanding free agents. Maybe they can make the team become great overnight, or maybe take a couple of seasons, maybe take a few seasons. But nonetheless, everyone is aware of the level that has been set by the Vegas Golden Knights, the best team in expansion history with the record of the most wins for an expansion team. And as you all know, in 2018, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals in their very first year of existence. Yes, indeed. That is what happened with the Golden Knights. But right about now, we're talking about the newest expansion team in the NHL, the Seattle Kraken. And we want people to know that this is not the first time that the city of Seattle has had a great hockey team. Yes, indeed. They used to have a hockey team way back when, way back early in the 1900s. And in 1917, the Seattle Metropolitans won the Stanley Cup. Yes, indeed. Those were the days before the NHL was even started. They used to call it the National Hockey Association. But the National Hockey Association folded. And then the NHL was started in 1917. So that very year, in the spring, before the NHL was started, it was still called the National Hockey Association. And in those days, it was not just the NHL teams that competed for the Stanley Cup. In those days, there were several leagues that competed for the Stanley Cup. Yes, indeed. And the Seattle Metropolitans, they used to play in a league called the Pacific Coast Hockey Association, or the Pacific Coast Hockey League. There was also another professional hockey league on the West Coast, known as the Western Hockey League. So there were several different hockey leagues, and all these leagues used to compete for the Stanley Cup. But after a while, I believe during the 1930s, the NHL got exclusive rights to the Stanley Cup, and the Stanley Cup became known as the NHL Championship. But before that, teams used to win championships in their own league, and then they would compete for the Stanley Cup. So sometimes they used to call it the World Championships. Yes, back in those days, the Stanley Cup. So there's a few notable historic realities about Seattle. This is not the first time that Seattle has a professional hockey team. As I told you, way back in 1917, the Seattle Metropolitans won the Stanley Cup. They were the first city in the USA to win the Stanley Cup. Previously, all Stanley Cup winners were from Canada. So Seattle was the first team in the USA, the first city in the USA to win the Stanley Cup. And also, another interesting history is that the Seattle Metropolitans were Stanley Cup finalists in 1919. But that was the year of the Spanish flu. Very similar to the COVID pandemic. The Spanish flu was happening in those years, in 1918 and 1919. And to tell you the truth, 1919 is the only year in history of the Stanley Cup where no Stanley Cup champion was declared. The series was cancelled after 5 games because of a bad outbreak of the so-called Spanish flu. It was the only season in Stanley Cup history that the Stanley Cup was not awarded. And that was all because of a dreadful pandemic known as the infamous Spanish flu, the likes of which the world did not see again until the recent worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. In 1919, the Stanley Cup Finals series featured the Montreal Canadiens playing against the Seattle Metropolitans. Can you imagine? So practically 100 years ago, in the first big major worldwide pandemic, the Seattle Metropolitans were playing for the Stanley Cup, and the series was cancelled after about 5 games because of the outbreak of the Spanish flu. And the league decided to not award the cup that year. You know what I mean? Players were fainting on the ice. There was not enough players to play the game. In those days, the NHL was also affected by the World War I situation. Yes, indeed. Because, some of the players were busy in the war, being drafted to the war and stuff like that. In fact, there's incidents where some hockey players was arrested for refusing to join the war. There was even issues like that. So it's a lot of things going on in Seattle history. As you can see, the Seattle Kraken is a new team. But the city is not totally new to hockey. They're the first city in the USA to have ever won a Stanley Cup championship. And they did that way back more than 100 years ago. In 1917. Ever since 1917, a lot of things has been going on in the NHL. The NHL was officially founded and started in 1917. Taking over from the National Hockey Association, they started the National Hockey League with the Montreal Canadiens and the Montreal Wanderers, as well as the Ottawa Senators, and with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Later on in the 20s, the NHL expanded to 10 teams, adding franchises in Boston, in Pittsburgh, in Chicago, and Detroit. As well as they added a new team from Montreal known as the Montreal Maroons. And they also added another team known as the New York Rangers and the New York Americans. But by 1942, the Great Depression and the World War II had reduced the league to just 6 teams. And those 6 teams are now famously known as the Original 6. The Original 6 NHL hockey teams. And that is a classic history now, where they call them the Original 6. Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs, Detroit Red Wings, Chicago Blackhawks, Boston Bruins, and New York Rangers. The original 6 NHL teams operated for 25 years in a row from 1942 to 1967. Yes, indeed. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to the Cool Game Podcast, brought to you by the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase, inside the Reggae Planet Spotlight, inside the Cool Game Podcast series. Tune in again next time, and we will continue the story of Seattle Kraken and the NHL expansion, and we will also be talking about many more teams in the NHL, including the beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. It's all about the coolest game in the world, the Great Canadian Ice Hockey Game, alongside the coolest music in the world, the great Jamaican reggae music. Once again, we'd like to say thank you for tuning in to the Cool Game Podcast. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tune in again next time, and we will continue the story